The rain poured heavily the night the strange child was born in Yuzo village. The clouds were thick and dark, hiding the moon completely. The villagers stayed inside their huts, listening to the loud thunder, wondering what kind of child could be born under such a stormy sky. They whispered among themselves that the baby must be a spirit child, only God could. As dawn broke, the news spread quickly. The child, named Chima, had eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. He did not cry like other babies. He only stared, quietly, at everything around him. The villagers were frightened. They believed he was a bad omen. They stayed away from Chima and his mother, Nkechi. Nkechi was a poor widow. Her husband had died a year before, and she had no family left. She loved Chima deeply, even though she, too, was afraid of the way people looked at him. When she walked through the village, people avoided her path, whispering about her strange child. But one girl, Ifeoma, was different. She was 10 years old, brave and kind-hearted. She lived with her grandmother in a small hut near the river. Ifeoma had heard the stories about Chima, but she didn't believe them. She was curious. She wanted to know more about him. So one afternoon, she decided to visit Nkechi's hut. Ifeoma knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Nkechi opened the door slowly, surprised to see anyone visit. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm Ifeoma. I want to see the baby," she replied, smiling. Nkechi hesitated but then let her in. Ifeoma stepped inside the small, dark hut. There, lying quietly in a basket, was Chima. His eyes were wide open, staring at her. Ifeoma gasped. She had never seen eyes like his, but instead of feeling afraid, she felt drawn to him. "He's not like the other babies, is he?" Ifeoma said quietly. Nkechi shook her head. "No, he's not. But he is my child, and I love him." Ifeoma nodded. She bent down and touched Chima's small hand. "I think he's special," she said. "I don't think the villagers are right about him." From that day, Ifeoma began visiting Chima every afternoon. She would sit beside him and tell him stories of the village, of the animals in the forest, and the spirits in the river. Chima never spoke, but Ifeoma could feel that he understood. She could see it in his glowing eyes. But one evening, as she was leaving the hut, she heard something strange. It was a low whisper, like the wind, but it was coming from Chima's direction. She turned around, her heart racing. "Ifeoma," the voice whispered. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Chima. He had spoken. Ifeoma ran home, her mind racing. What had just happened? Was Chima truly a spirit child, like the villagers said? She didn't know what to think. But one thing was certain, Chima was not an ordinary child. There was something powerful about him, something the village didn't understand. The next morning, Ifeoma returned to Chima's hut. She had to know what had happened. But before she could knock on the door, she heard loud voices coming from inside. "Leave this village. Take your cursed child and go." It was Chief Obi, the village leader. He stood tall, his face angry. Behind him were several other villagers, all shouting at Nkechi. "He is not cursed." Nkechi shouted back, holding Chima tightly in her arms. Chief Obi shook his head. "We cannot take the risk. Bad things have been happening ever since he was born. The crops are failing, the river is drying up. We believe he is the cause." Ifeoma felt her heart pounding. She had to do something. She pushed through the crowd and stood in front of Chief Obi. "Chima is not cursed," she shouted. "He spoke to me. He is special, not dangerous." The crowd gasped. Chief Obi looked at her with suspicion. "He spoke to you? What did he say?" "He said my name," Ifeoma replied, her voice steady. "He has powers, yes, but I don't believe he means harm. Maybe we don't understand him yet." Chief Obi frowned. "We don't trust what we don't understand. The village council will decide what to do with him." The villagers murmured in agreement, and Chief Obi left, but Ifeoma could see the doubt in their eyes. She knew she didn't have much time. She had to find out more about Chima's powers before it was too late. That night, as Ifeoma lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Chima's glowing eyes, the soft voice that had spoken her name. There was something more to him, something that could change everything. She had to protect him. But how? The next day, Ifeoma returned to Chima's hut, her mind full of questions. "Chima," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "What are you? Why did you speak to me?" Chima's eyes glowed brighter, and once again, the soft whisper filled the room. "Ifeoma," he said. "You are the only one who can help me." "Help you? How?" Ifeoma asked, her voice trembling. "There is a prophecy," Chima whispered. "A prophecy that says I will either save or destroy this village. I don't know which one yet." Ifeoma felt her heart race. "But how can I help you?" "You must find the elders," Chima replied. "The old ones who know the ancient stories. They will tell you what to do." Ifeoma nodded, her mind set. She would find the elders and uncover the truth. But as she stepped out of the hut, she knew that danger was growing. The villagers were losing patience. If she didn't find answers soon, it might be too late for Chima and for Yuzo village. Ifeoma didn't know where to begin her search for the elders. They lived far from the village, deep in the forest, and most people had forgotten about them. But Ifeoma had heard stories from her grandmother, who used to tell her that the elders were wise and knew things that no one else did. Ifeoma gathered some food and water in a small bag and set off early in the morning, before anyone in the village could stop her. She walked quickly, her heart beating fast. She had never been this far from home before, and the forest seemed darker and more dangerous than she had imagined. After hours of walking, she reached a small clearing. In the center stood a tall, old man with a long white beard. He wore a colorful robe, and his eyes were deep and knowing. "Are you one of the elders?" Ifeoma asked, her voice shaking. The old man nodded slowly. "I am." "Why have you come?" "I need your help," Ifeoma said. "There is a child in my village, Chima. He has strange powers, and the villagers are afraid of him. But I believe there is a prophecy about him. Can you tell me what it means?" The elder closed his eyes for a moment, as if thinking deeply. Then he spoke. "The prophecy speaks of a child born under a stormy sky, with eyes that glow like fire. This child will have the power to either save or destroy the village. But the choice will not be his alone. It will depend on those around him. If fear and hatred guide their actions, the village will fall. But if love and understanding guide them, the village will be saved." Ifeoma's heart sank. The villagers were already full of fear and hatred. How could she change their minds? The elder seemed to read her thoughts. "There is one way," he said softly. "You must bring the child to the sacred tree at the edge of the forest. There, you will find the answers you seek." Ifeoma nodded. She would do whatever it took to save Chima. But as she turned to leave, the elder placed a hand on her shoulder. "Be careful," he warned. "Dark forces are at work. There are those who do not want the child to fulfill his destiny." Ifeoma thanked the elder and hurried back to the village, her mind racing. She knew what she had to do. But would she be able to convince the villagers to let her take Chima to the sacred tree? Or would their fear and anger lead them to destroy him before she had a chance? Ifeoma hurried back to the village, her feet moving quickly over the uneven ground. As she approached, she could hear the villagers arguing near Chief Obi's hut. They were gathered in a large circle, their faces full of anger and fear. Nkechi stood in the middle, holding Chima tightly to her chest, while Chief Obi shouted to be heard over the crowd. "This child is a curse," Chief Obi bellowed. "We must rid ourselves of him before more harm befalls the village." The crowd roared in agreement. Some shouted that Chima should be sent away, others said worse things, things that made Ifeoma's stomach turn. She knew she had to act fast. She pushed her way through the crowd until she was standing beside Nkechi. "Wait!" Ifeoma shouted, her voice trembling but loud enough to silence the crowd. "You don't understand. Chima is not a curse. He is the answer to the prophecy." Chief Obi turned to her, his face hard and full of suspicion. "What do you know about the prophecy, child?" Ifeoma swallowed, trying to calm her racing heart. "I went to the elders in the forest. They told me about the prophecy. Chima is the child born under the stormy sky. He has the power to either save or destroy the village, but it's up to us. If we act out of fear and hatred, we will bring destruction upon ourselves. But if we choose love and understanding, we can save the village." The villagers murmured, exchanging worried glances. Chief Obi frowned deeply, but before he could speak, a loud voice interrupted him. "She lies." It was Okeke, one of the wealthiest men in the village, who had always opposed anything out of the ordinary. He stepped forward, glaring at Ifeoma. "This child has brought nothing but bad luck since the day he was born. The crops are failing, the river is drying up, and now you want us to believe that he is here to save us. It is too dangerous." Ifeoma's heart sank as the crowd began to nod in agreement. She knew that if she didn't act quickly, the villagers would never let her take Chima to the secretary. "I'm not lying," Ifeoma shouted, her voice rising above the murmurs. "We must take Chima to the secretary at the edge of the forest. The elders said it is the only way to understand his powers. If we don't, we will never know what he's capable of. Please, give me a chance." For a moment, there was silence. Then, to her surprise, Nkechi stepped forward, her face full of determination. "I trust Ifeoma," she said softly but firmly. "She has always been kind to my son. If she says there is a way to save him, I believe her." Chief Obi looked between Ifeoma and the crowd, his face troubled. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally spoke. "Very well," he said slowly. "You may take Chima to the secretary. But if anything goes wrong, Ifeoma, it will be on your head." Ifeoma nodded, relief flooding through her. She turned to Nkechi, who handed her Chima with trembling hands. The baby looked up at her with his glowing eyes, and Ifeoma felt a surge of determination. She knew what she had to do. The journey to the secretary was long and filled with tension. Ifeoma carried Chima on her back, wrapped in a colorful cloth, while Nkechi followed closely behind. The villagers had allowed them to go, but many still watched from the shadows, their eyes full of doubt. As they neared the edge of the forest, the air grew cooler, and the trees became taller and darker. Ifeoma felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept walking, her mind focused on the task ahead.